Hello and welcome to February. We're going to be working on our 2024 bullet journal spread. Like always, we need to start off by swatching our supplies. First, I have my pens. These are tried and true. I love them. They're kind of gel pens. And then we're trying out some new water-based markers. They have a brush nib on one side and a bullet nib on the other, and there's minimal bleeding, which I love. I've already sketched out this month's theme. With it being February, I wanted something romantic but not overtly Valentine's Day, and I wanted to bring in some fresh colors like green and yellow. January has been so brown and drab, and I just needed a bit of color. So the theme for this month is You've Got Mail inspired, with love letters and daisies. You've Got Mail is one of my favorite rom-coms. I remember watching it when I was a teenager with my family and loving it. When I got into college, I showed my roommates because they had never seen it before, and they were outraged. They thought that it didn't make sense that she fell in love with him by the end. I mean, it's a rom-com, so obviously they're going to get together. The one thing about these markers is they are a little bit streaky, which, you can work with if you go in circular motions. I figured that out around this point when I was doing the heart on that envelope. Bullet journaling for me is a way of keeping track of the day-to-day, just micro-journaling, because I have tried journaling so many different ways and have so many unfinished journals where you're just writing in what happens every day. But with a bullet journal, you can kind of have it be whatever you need it to be. With my ADHD, I tend to want to change my system rather dramatically, and so having this be both a journaling method and a planner really helps me to be able to keep track of things and make sure that I am on top of deadlines. And looking back, I can kind of tell where I was at any given moment in my journal and kind of remember things. I'm the type of person who, if I'm listening to a podcast or music or watching a movie or in a lecture, if I draw, then I'm able to remember things a lot better. And I don't know, something about drawing and writing things down in my bullet journal, it helps me to remember where I was at that time, that snapshot in my life. Here I am making the daisies, and I wasn't entirely sure how I liked them because I had used the brush markers for the centers and for the stems, but I didn't really want to use straight blue to do the petals, and so I was using a pen to outline each of them. And I just wasn't sure if it was going to turn out. I was a little bit nervous about it. The trick with flowers, if you want to make them look a little bit more realistic, granted these are not hyper-realistic by any means, is to make sure that each petal is slightly different from the other. You don't want them to be completely uniform because nature never is. Looking at references also helps, which I definitely was doing for this entire process. There are so many movies about New York, and yet I feel like when I picture New York, I imagine Kathleen Kelly's New York with a bouquet of sharpened pencils and a butterfly getting on the subway. It makes me think of the gardens in Central Park and the autumn leaves crunching beneath your feet. And yeah, it's definitely a romanticized version of it. I've never been to New York, but I have been to several big cities, and for every beautiful thing, there are things that are inconvenient or smell bad. And I'm sure that New York is no exception to that. But I like to think that somewhere the New York of Joe Fox and Kathleen Kelly, that it exists. I've always loved the feeling of feeling small next to something big, like the ocean or mountains or really tall buildings. Maybe that's part of the romance to it, is that I know that if I were to go to New York, that I would have that feeling of being small, but not insignificant, being part of something bigger. Strangely, I think my favorite part of doing the daisies was doing the leaves. They just came so naturally, and it just looked good without me having to really try too hard on it, which I really appreciated because I felt like I was overthinking those daisies. Now, here is where I make a little bit of a mistake. I used some gray to do some shadows, which I think was fine. Like, that worked out really, really well to give it a little bit more depth. So I really think that worked. But in a second here, I come in with the blue, and it's kind of grown on me since then, but the moment I put that blue on the paper, I just made a mistake. So you'll notice that I only put the blue on 3 of these flowers, just here and there, because I wanted to make sure that it wasn't just one that stood out from the rest, but I did not want to make the same mistake on all of them. I tried to use a water brush to kind of feather it out and make it not as noticeable, but it did not work. So whenever I do a bullet journal spread, I always make sure that on the monthly section I have a focus, because I want to have goals that I'm reaching for, but I can't have too many things that I'm working on at once. Now this month is a little bit of an exception, since one of my goals is going to be networking at different conferences this month, and one of those conferences is LTUE. I don't feel too bad about both of those being under my focus. I'm also working on the short story that's in between Constantine 3 and Constantine 4. I'm kind of excited about that one. And I'm going to be doing some audio for the Sheep Panic. My grandma has been loving to read my books, but she's getting a little bit older and has a little bit of a hard time reading, especially when it's a smaller font. So I'm going to be recording that short story so that she can listen to it. Now, it wouldn't be a monthly spread without there being the dates. And I wanted to make sure that we brought the daisies onto every page in this spread. And since this is a Dutch door, I really enjoyed doing this Dutch door, actually. We have the daisies on one side of it, and then we're going to put just a couple on this side at the bottom. And you'll notice that I don't touch the blue again. In fact, it's gone from my spread of colors at the top because it just did not work the way I thought it would. Part of me thinks that it would be really romantic to have a pen pal and never know who they are and fall in love with them through their writing. I, as an author, really do believe that words have incredible power, and just looking at how someone texts can tell me a lot about a person. But at the same time, with my experiences in online dating, I don't think that having it be anonymous would make it any better. So, I love You've Got Mail, but it's not very realistic. But when we're looking for a romantic comedy, I don't think we're looking for realism. I think we're looking for an escape, something that can give us a happy ending. I am very much the kind of person who likes to watch the same movies over and over and over again because they're familiar and you don't have to stress because you know how they'll end. Now, something else that I always love to include in my bullet journal spreads for each month is a scripture for the month. I know not everyone is interested in having something religious on their bullet journal, but it helps me to keep a focus on what's important to me. I also didn't notice until later that I completely forgot to put the hymn in after we loved, because it's we love him because he first loved us. So I went back and fixed that later, but I didn't notice it until later. I was kind of torn on whether to leave the envelope blank or to come in with color, and I decided that it just seemed a little bit bare without the color over there, so went in with the green and added that in. And don't ask me why the letter is in sideways. It makes sense to no one. Now, going into the weekly spreads, I knew that I didn't want to take too much time on them. Granted, I ended up taking quite a bit of time anyway, But I did a Dutch door so that I would be able to make the top header once and then not have to worry about it again. And it worked pretty well. I actually am really pleased with it, other than the fact that I decided to go a little bit crazy on doing each of the days, which you'll see here in a minute. We're adding those daisies in to bring that continuity in, once again avoiding the blue. When I first started bullet journaling, I always wanted to have a different font for each month, and that kind of just turned into, I don't have time for this. I'm just going to use what I know, which is cursive and print. Now, I always include some sort of quote as well. In this case, it's a quote from a song, specifically a song that is in the movie. It's called I Guess the Lord Must Be in New York City, originally by Harry Nilsson. I like to listen to this song, especially when I'm traveling, when I'm on planes, or I guess even when I'm going for a walk. It just kind of has this happy, upbeat feel. Now down here, I decided I wanted each day to be a letter and to have all of the other extraneous things be little notes, which I thought was kind of fun. And I was able to use a lot of the different colors to make the outlines on the paper. This winter, even though the weather's been good where I'm at, has just felt so long. And I'm really excited to start seeing some greenery, to see the flowers poking their heads up, to see the buds coming on the trees and the birds coming back. And I know it's a bit early to be feeling that way, seeing as it's only February, but I feel like the sun is coming up earlier every day and there's hope on the horizon that winter is almost over. So something that I started doing a couple of months ago was the Monster of the Week, which is essentially my main task that I want to work on throughout the week. Something that I can just have a focus on and make sure that that thing gets beat during the week. And so I have that up in the upper left-hand corner there. Saturday, I decided it was going to be one of those love letters. The stamps were both exciting and also kind of frustrating because I had to come up with different patterns for every single one of them. I mean, I guess I didn't have to, but I just decided to just make it up and not worry about it. My favorite part of these letters is the fact that the days are the postmarks, which I don't know why it makes me so happy. It really shouldn't, but part of me thought that maybe I should wait to put the squiggly lines on it until after the day had passed, kind of like, oh, this day has been postmarked, it's been mailed to you. But I wanted to see what it all looked like all together, so. You'll also note that we started in January. I did have a January spread, and I usually only want to have 4 weeks in any given month. And so I realized, oh, well, we'll just have the 4 weeks there. February in this spread actually has 5 weeks, which I can't believe. February is the shortest month, and I gave it 5 weeks, which is crazy. And here is our spread with our daisies and our love letters. Thank you so much for coming along with me while I'm planning out my February. I hope you have a wonderful day, and love you. See ya. Bye.